Travel's supposed to be exciting, but for most of us, it's stressful, time consuming, and way more expensive than it should be. On World Travel Made Easy, I'll show you exactly how to flip that. Each week, you'll hear from different expert guests and get to hear real stories that are packed with different tools, credit card point strategies, and lessons that are going to save you time, cut cost, and make your trip smoother. Whether it's a solo adventure, a getaway with friends or family, or just travel that supports your business, this is going to be your shortcut to traveling smarter and most likely on points. Welcome back to another episode of World Travel Made Easy. On this week's episode, I'm excited to have an old friend from as and also an old coworker, Alex Maiersperger. He is the global marketing lead at SAS, and he also leads the Young Health Leader Summit. And really excited to have him here today. Hey, Alex, what's going on?
Super excited to be here. This is a true joy to have the microphone flipped on me and get to share some thoughts.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I don't want to sell you short. You also have a podcast called The Health Pulse. So for any healthcare leaders, anyone coming up in the healthcare space, I highly suggest you go take a listen to it. I was in the healthcare space for 10 plus years. So when I first joined, that's kind of how I got to meet Alex was he was hosting the podcast. He was interviewing all these top CEOs. So you're definitely in for a treat because he knows how to work the mic. But again, don't want to sell you short. Do you mind just giving a quick intro, background, what you're doing, and then also from a travel perspective, why are you here to talk to us about some travel?
Maybe it's not so much work the mic, maybe it's just have a mic. That's the helpful part. Like you said, I lead global product marketing for our healthcare division at SAS, so global software technology company. I also lead the Advancement League. A couple friends and I started an organization. We started around the Young Health Leader Summit. We've since branched out to a few more executive series, a leadership event called Health and Sports, coming up next May, which is exciting, trying to just bring together the healthcare world in a way that traditionally hasn't. So a little less formal, a little bit built around activity, built around some travel experiences, actually. One of the things we saw early in our career was a lot of our hospital administrator peers, they sort of saw their own organization and then they went to like one annual conference that was held in the same location every year. And so it sort of occurred to us of just like your worldview gets really small when it's like, I know my organization and I know this one place where I see these same people, and then repeat that times 20 years of your career for the first 20 years. So we said if we ever get a chance to host an event, we would do it in a different city every year. That way, if you followed us for the first 10 or so years, it was like your work usually paid for you to go see these different American cities. So travel actually was sort of built into the thought process. Although some wild stories on that is like hosting an event in a different city every year and often a different place that you've never been. We've wildly miscalculated what distance looks like on a map and what real life distance is. And so we've made some definite errors around there. So travel wise, I married a Brazilian. And so we've been married 15, almost 16 years now. And I think that's probably my family traveled a little bit growing up. We always were taking vacations back to visit family. We lived on the East Coast. We had quite a bit of family on the West Coast. We went international a few times. And so always had just a little bit of the dabbling in travel life or getting in an RV or my parents packing up in a car and forcing us to go somewhere. And then marrying a Brazilian who had been all over the world. So she lived in Brazil till she was 21. Then she lived in London for a year and a half. And then she lived in multiple US states. And then I say got stuck with me. And maybe she doesn't say that. We've adventured a little bit. So I think she's the more adventurous spirit in our relationship. And I get to plan things and find things and do the things.
That's awesome. I love that background story because it isn't just, yeah, I traveled here once and then, it just spiraled into this. It's no, I saw a challenge in the space that I was in and we said, hey, why don't we decide to create something that's cool? And what I love too is we've all been to the conferences, especially if you've been to the same healthcare ones. And what I like what you guys do is it's just very casual where you aren't in a suit and tie, right? It's you're having fun. It's kind of like a little mini vacation, but it's networking. You guys put a lot into that, and I'm excited. I mean, you guys are going to be coming to Charlotte here, so the good news is there. You have some people here that can help plug you in and help with some of those events.
They were
But
holding you to that,
no,
holding you to it
100%.
live
No,
on
that's
camera.
it. At right when you said, yeah, you don't know how much work goes in. I'm like, well, just let me know. I can hook you guys up, tell you where to go, connect you with the right people. But also the fact that you know, you married your wife, you guys have traveled, and then now you not only you and her have traveled, you now have kids to help travel, and that's one of the main reasons, right? I wanted to have you come on the show is I don't have kids. And a lot of the times people are asking, well, yeah, Ross, it's easy for you to do it because you have these flexible schedules and right, you probably spend all this money on credit cards and this and that, which we really don't. It's just strategy, but it's really how do you get into the mindset and how do you strategically outline, right, planning these trips with three kids and just what kind of gets you going there. So I'd love just to kind of hear a little bit more about, right, like what has inspired you to, travel with your kids and family.
My mom actually tells a story. I think I was probably 8 years old, and the game of life, that like the little cars and the little toy people that you have, the like board game.
Hey, I wanted to take a quick break to say thank you so much for tuning into the show. The only way the show grows is through listeners like you helping us share it. So if you're enjoying the show, it'd mean the world to me if you hit that 5-star rating, shared it with a friend or family member who's ready to travel more, save money, or just needs a little bit more inspiration and that nudge. And if you're posting about it on Instagram, go ahead and tag Itinerary Boss, and we'll make sure to reshare it and shout you out for giving us a shout out. Thanks so much for the support. It truly means a lot. And now back with the show.
Life. We were playing with like a larger portion of our family, so probably cousins and different things. And I had this family where I think I actually had three kids. And so now fast forward, I like have real life three kids, but I had these three fake kids in the game of life and I was about to win. And I was probably only 8 years old or so. And I don't know how exactly the game works. I haven't played in a long time, but the choice was either like I choose to give up my kids for money so that I could win the game, or I don't do that and I like lose the game. And even as an 8 year old, I wasn't willing to give up my fake kids in this board game to win. It was like, look, and I think they were all trying to reason with me of like, look, this is an easy decision. You just have to do this and you win. And I was like, I can't give up my kids. Um, and so I think part of the reason for traveling with kids or things is just like I come from a place like I've always wanted kids, and so fortunate to have kids and things. And so it feels like a natural extension. My wife and I have traveled solo. We went on a fun anniversary trip for like a 10-year anniversary or things. And we've done it a couple times and some short stints, one little longer one. But for the most part, every time we sit down and think about planning out our year or planning out travel, it's always like, we want the kids to experience this too. And so it's become really hard for us to say like we need to get away or we need a little bit of time. It's like we want our kids to be around and we love the life that we've created with them in it, included. And so that's part of it. Part of it also is seeing friends. We've been really fortunate to, I always say to limit the inputs is always like the advice that I give to people, both career wise and life wise. And I think certainly parenting and probably even travel wise is like finding a few people at all stages of life that you really value their opinion, you see how they live their life, makes it easier than seeing like Instagram user 2750 and being like, oh, they did this, so I need to do this, or like, oh, they're parenting in a way different way. And so we've been really fortunate. There was two couples and their kids and life situation that really influenced sort of my own belief. One was a family that talked about, they were both physicians, very like excelled in their careers. And they said, we're going to save up and build this dream house for our kids when they're in high school. That's like the time they need it. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have this thing. And they did that. And they sort of quote unquote sacrificed a little bit along the way so that they could afford this dream house. And they built this custom amazing house with this amazing backyard and amazing amenities for their kids in high school. And what do high school kids want to do? Be away from their house as much as possible. And it's like their kids didn't want that house. It was like, we want to go to our friend's house, even if it's not as nice or doesn't have the amenities. And we want to have our freedom. We want to drive for the first time, all these things. And so they gave us advice really early on when we had our first kid. They sat at the dinner table with us and said, our advice to you is find a home that you can raise your kids in, even if it stretches your budget a little bit early or if it does things like don't wait for that experience. Another family shared just you only get the chance. There's some statistic, and I'll probably butcher the statistic, but it's like the majority of the time that you spend in life with your immediate family, so your kids included, is with them outside of their like little kid ages, obviously. And so if you live a long life and your kids live a long life, you the majority of time that you're going to spend with them isn't as kids. And so just like the quote of you only get to see your kids grow up once, or you only get to experience that with them once, really hit home with us at a time when it was like, man, that's so true. I remember I think she was 3 at the time. We have really strict bedtimes for our kids, especially when they were early. It was like keep them to a schedule. And the one time we broke that, there was like a county fair that was this big deal in this small town that we lived in. And we let our 3-year-old stay up late enough to see the dark outside. She like never stayed up till nighttime, essentially. And the first time she saw a Ferris wheel in real life, she did one of those like movie scenes where she looked up and was like, and she fell completely backwards on her back. Like, was so amazed at this thing that was happening that she like lost sense of balance and fell completely backwards. And like, you really truly only get to experience that wonder and joy and excitement at a Ferris wheel that's probably terribly put together and unsafe. Like that was the coolest experience that she had ever experienced, and we got to live that alongside her. So I think quite a few things have influenced my decision to try to take my kids on as many adventures as I can.
I love it. No, and that's, I mean, I think that's the good thing is there's people that have kind of made those mistakes. And that's,
Yeah.
I like that you broke down three separate examples, kind of because it brings it full circle and can completely relate to that even without, right, having kids. It's just asking the questions of people when you're early in your career of like,
Yeah.
just ask as many questions as possible, be a sponge and just be like, okay, what's maybe your one or two biggest regrets? What are the mistakes? What do you wish you did at my age? And it's usually the same stuff. Travel more, work less, spend
Yeah.
more time
Yeah.
with your
Right.
family. And you're like, okay, but I'm
Good stories.
also corporate America's telling me I got to climb the ladder, make more money, do this. And then you kind of realize, okay, you know, the quote, more money, more problems a lot of times. So it's like you have to kind of figure out what do you want to do and then how do you want to build your life. And that's the beauty around travel is, right, you can do that and you also can work a, 9 to 5 job or you get limited PTO, but you have to, right, I think what you said that I really liked is you sit down at the beginning of the year and you say, okay, what do we want to do? And
Yeah.
that's where a lot of people fall short. And the biggest thing, and when I talk to a lot of friends, people like, oh, how do you guys travel, using points, miles? They go, oh, they don't work. It's like, no, it isn't that. You just have to have some flexibility. And if you don't have as much flexibility and you have 3 kids that you have to get 3 seats for, like you got to sit down and right when those school schedules come out, right? No, okay, here's when our spring break is, or hey, maybe here's when our teacher holiday is, or here's when,
Yep.
right? Here's when some of those holidays are where not everyone's going to be going places where it's going to be harder to find availability and prices are going to be higher. It's, you just have to have that. And once you get in a routine, it's easier. But that's where I like that. And that's something we do exactly, right? It's like, okay, what are some of our what do we want to do this year? Like, are there specific places we want to go, right? And then from there, it's okay, are there other things that we want to experience with our family, or do we have any weddings? And just prioritizing, right? A lot of the times you and your family first. And then if you get that on the schedule, there isn't the excuse of, oh, well, we have this or we have that. It's no, we made a plan to go, like for you guys, we made a plan to go to Japan and Spain. We're going there this year, no matter
Yep.
what. And I think it's cool because, and I'm sure your kids really appreciate that. And I'm sure each year they're like, oh, this was cool. Like, where do we get to go next? And then it just kind of turns into like that tradition.
Actually, I'm not sure that they appreciate it yet. My oldest child constantly says, like, I was born into the wrong family.
Wow.
She's like, every time we lug her somewhere else around the world, she's always like, I would have been just fine, like, hanging out at home and seeing my friends and doing my routine. And now I'm stuck on some 14-hour flight that I don't want to be on and didn't ask for. So I think they'll come to an appreciation at some point, but
Yeah, they
hasn't
will.
quite
I
hit them
mean,
yet.
it is tough when, Spain, and I know we'll get into this, but when it's 110 degrees, I think
Yeah.
anyone in their right mind is like, oh man, this is
Yeah.
this this
Kids
is
are like,
a
it was
this is
North
tough.
Carolina is pretty nice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 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 for sure. But I think over time, right, when they start to, as they continue to get older, they start to have conversations with people. And that's a lot of the times, and you'll probably see as they get older, right, and go into college, right, become adults, they'll probably be like, those were awesome trips. Like,
Yeah,
wow,
that's the
that
hope.
was like this is how much it cost. How do I do that again? How do I recreate that? So, and I've brought on a bunch of people who have, who've had kids who had started when they were younger, done used credit cards, points and miles to do that, and just like asking them what was the impact now that your kids are in college or young adults. It's like I've just seen the growth of the different, right, the different cultures, how just how rewarding, how they don't take everything for granted because they see that, here we have all this stuff and over there they're just happy to get right a meal sometimes. So I think that's something that you guys will definitely see, but would love to hear just a little bit more about, Japan and Spain because I know you've gone there just over the past 6 months. So,
Yeah,
why
we've
did
had
you
a
pick
good
those that
run, a
yeah. Why?
good travel run.
First, why did you pick those destinations?
Japan. So my dad actually went to all of elementary school in Japan. So first grade through fifth grade, his family lived. He had a sister who's a few years older than him, so she actually went to high school in Japan. And so like Japan's just always been a big part of my family story. He came back with Japanese art and things. So growing up in Philadelphia and Michigan, we had Japanese art on our wall, or we had these little figurines and different things. And so it's always been somewhere in my mind of like, that's crazy. My dad lived there for quite a few years and I would love to experience it. And so I've always just had some emotional attachment to like when people talk about Japan or things. And then again, a wife that plans ahead and that thinks through things. That it used to be, I think, Scott's Cheap Flights. It's now going.com. And so
Hmm.
you can sign up for those like alerts and say, I think you can put in a threshold and it's if flights drop below this number or at this time, you have X amount of time to book it. And so part of it was just it didn't really make sense timing wise. I was actually working towards a big work conference. I was coming off like just all the busyness in life and flights dropped to like this unprecedented level. And talking about online of like some people say it was during Japan's spring break and so it's called Golden Week there. And you'll see everything online that says do not go during Golden Week because businesses are closed because so many people travel, all these things. And luckily, we had a friend who said that has been such strong messaging for the last few years that now that seems like a good week to go. Like that's the
Nice.
week people avoid and everyone goes. And so, timing wise, what we realized too is like work is never, there's always going to be a conference, an event, there's always going to be a meeting. There's always like, if you have quarterly meetings to prepare for, there's another quarter comes in 3 months and you're just like never going to do it. And so flights drop down below our threshold of like, oh, that makes a ton of sense to go to Japan for that amount of money. And we just booked it. And it was like, we'll figure out the rest of it later. But you were going. So Japan was awesome. My dad had this experience when he was there. He was probably like 6 or 7 years old. He got separated from his dad at one of the shrines, and a policeman found him, like a little 7-year-old kid wandering, and held his hand, walked up to the top of the temple, the top of the shrine, and looked down because you could see the hill. And his dad is like white American, 6'5", like college football player. And so it was easily identifiable in the crowd. So it was like, oh, that's your dad. Like, we'll take you down to him. And so me and my dad and my 6-year-old son got to recreate that memory. We didn't lose my kid, but we got to like walk him up to the top of the shrine and see if we could find my tall dad in the crowd. And it was just such a cool like family full circle moment to see the exact apartments where he grew up and walk the way to school. The first hill he ever skateboarded, we got to go down, and just tons of fun. And my like 3 generations. So you had my son who's 6, the same age that my dad lived there in first grade, and my son in first grade. It was just such a cool family experience. Spain, my mom's wife just got, or my wife's mom, just got her citizenship from Spain. So they have Spanish descent. So 3 out of their 4 grandparents are from Spain and the other one's from Portugal. And so we got to do sort of like another family history attachment tour, to do a big loop around both Spain and Portugal and see some of the places where their ancestors immigrated from and where they changed jobs and locations, where they got married. So just really cool. Both places have like strong personal attachment. And it felt like this is the time to do it. And we were just so fortunate to be able to pull it off in the same year.
That's awesome. And I love what you said too. And well, it's first cool that you got to, there's family attachment to it. And I think that's when people ask me like, what's the best place to go? And I'm like, well, for me, it might be different than you, right? And I think for you
Yeah.
guys, right, you wanted to recreate some of those moments. And I love that answer of Japan, we wanted to go here because of this. And then Spain, same thing. And you got to
Yeah.
go to some amazing countries. But I love what you said. And I think this is where, I mean, we all love working, we all love grinding and everything, but hustle culture gets to you and people are like, oh, I have this QBR or I can't take off or I'll do it next year. And I've heard so many stories of people who are like, oh, I worked my whole career and then we're going to travel when we retire and then something
Yeah.
happens and they don't get to do it. So it's like, don't worry about QBRs about, I mean, I was world's best employee. I would try to plan my trips sometimes around when I knew they were the annual sales meetings or the annual like once you get in the groove of being somewhere, you're like, I know this might be on this time. Let me figure out a way if we have a snowboarding trip or this trip, like you. So that's I mean, just thinking through, not always saying, well, work, I have this conference, or maybe I'm going to wait till this comes out. Just like you said, plan in advance is huge because then if that does come up, a lot of the times your people really aren't going to care. They'll be like, okay, cool, just let
Yeah.
me know in advance. Like, appreciate it. Like, we're all humans. If they aren't like that, then you're probably working for the wrong company or with the wrong people. Um, so that's but no, I love the fact that you guys went to Japan, Spain, Portugal, all cool places. And Golden Week, that's really good to know. Japan's definitely on our list at some point.
It's got to
And
be. It
no,
was
100%. We've done,
amazing.
my wife wants to go to Spain. I've been 2 times and we did Portugal a couple years ago, which it's amazing. Highly suggest that. And easy to get over there too. I mean,
Yeah.
on whether it's cash or points. So no, I love it. And I love that you guys use Scott's cheap flights. Definitely, I know you're going to get more into the points game, which will save you guys some money and hopefully get you guys some business class flights when you guys are going over there. But are there any mistakes? Like, what's I guess one big mistake just through all the planning from travel you feel like you've made and that you do differently now?
Oh man, so many. One is, I think you already alluded to it with like when you see someone travel and you're like, oh, they must be rich, or you see someone travel in your same job sort of category and you're like, wait, they get to travel more than me or different things. Some of it is about prioritization of daily spending. And so I know people that talk about travel, but or as if it's like this really unattainable thing, but they spend absurd amounts of money, at least absurd in my eyes, at local restaurants or the day-to-day life at their car or like whatever it is. So some of it is like the adjustment side. I think the biggest mistake I've said, and I'm not trying to plug your podcast and business. I'm like, this is the please use itinerary boss portion of the segment, but it's probably paying full price. I think that's the biggest problem. I remember we had this a good couple friend. They've got 3 kids as well. They travel like this unbelievable. Like if you just see their sort of Instagram highlight reel, you're like, man, they've gone everywhere over the last 2 years or whatever it is, and it's like they've got to be just paying crazy amounts for this. I wonder how they do that. I wonder things. And then you find out they've never paid for a hotel because they do home exchanges. And this home exchange website, they're like, it works on sort of a point system that if someone comes and stays in your home for more time than you go and stay in someone else's home, almost that like home swap theory, you can build up points. And so at one point they had someone living in this like basement apartment that they had built in their home or living in this. So they had built up so many credits that they're able to spend all of these nights away from home for free. And oftentimes they'll swap cars and amenities with the person too. So it's like, oh, that's one sort of hack that they've done. And then you find out they've tagged on a lot of the trips to the work trips. And so it's like, oh, they have at least one flight free and then a couple days of hotel. And so they're only paying, not even paying, they're staying extra in this home exchange. And then they've got their kids with them and different things. And so part of it is just sort of starting to learn the system. I think I've done a bunch of trips where it's just, we go on travelocity.com and book the flight and then find a hotel and book a car and you do it all. And it's like, man, with a little bit more thoughtfulness and maybe a little bit more time, and had we really planned this out, sometimes obviously it doesn't work out exactly. It's like a life situation is we got to take this trip to go visit a friend or someone we got to help in some way. And that is one thing. But if you can thoughtfully think through, like in the next 6 months, what do we want to do? In the next year, in the next 2 years, there's often what we've found is ways to save on, even if it's not fully through the points game. if it's just in timing of when you book the trip or in real comparison shopping. So definitely paying full price. The other thing I would say, we made a mistake and went to a bullfight in Spain. And apparently they're only legal in like three countries. It's like Spain, Portugal, and Colombia because of how prominent it is in their culture. But traveling outside of just like how to pay for travel, all sorts of mistake in travel. We took our animal loving like 10-year-old daughter to a bullfight. And I was 100% convinced, like zero YouTube, zero strategy before this. We just happened upon this bullfighting ring, saw all these people nicely dressed, and it was like, oh, it's in 30 minutes. Like, we'll just buy tickets and go. This will be awesome. We sat down, and in my mind, somehow, like 2025, I was just convinced that bullfighting is like a show. Like you wave the thing, the bull runs through it, and everyone claps, and it's like fun. And instead, it was like unbelievable, gruesome violence and graphic and disturbing on every level. And so there's cultural differences, and there's things that with travel you should probably do a little bit of research beforehand of what you spend your money on and where.
Wow, that's funny. Well, I guess the win is you didn't go take everyone running with the bulls and you had you, your wife, and your three
Yeah,
kids
yeah,
like
I would
dressed up
research that first.
running.
Yes.
We actually, when we were going over there in 2018, me and my buddies, we were like debating on should we do it. We had like six of us because we were in Spain during it, and like I think two out of the six were like, "Yeah, I'm down." And then we were just like, "Yeah, probably not the best idea." Like, what if you're that one person that just like it's madness. We watched some videos. We're like, "Yeah, no, I'm good." But
Yeah,
no,
that one you got to plan out which street you're on and where and how close you can get to jumping over the nearest fence. We lasted exactly 4 minutes of a major bullfight.
that's funny. But
That's
hey, it's
lesson
it's
learned.
it's a good story and a lesson learned. No, that is too good. But no, I mean, I think everyone, right? Like, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to start this is, I mean, I made every mistake in the world, but when you travel, you brought up a couple really good points. When you're traveling a lot for work, how can you strategically, if you're going somewhere cool, like if you're already getting the flights paid for, how do you tack on? And I have a buddy who goes down to Latin America, South America a lot, and he's just like, yeah, I mean, and if you're worried about is this okay? I mean, usually if you just ask your company and say, hey, can I do this? They're going to say yes, that's totally fine. For the days from a flight standpoint, you may have to pay extra for the nights you're staying, but if a lot of the times if you're traveling off for work, you can rack up enough points that will help you pay for those. So I think that's one thing that I mean I used to do that all the time, which was I mean it was great. And also signing up for loyalty programs. I think a big mistake I see people who, whether they're in sales, marketing, working for a company, and they have like a company corporate card, they think, oh, the company's already paying for it. You know, I can't sign up for this. And they don't sign up for the loyalty program. And it's like, no, sign up for Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt, IHG, you know, wherever you're flying in and out of. I mean, I was in DC for a while. So I was like, BWI was Southwest, Dulles was United, and DCA was American. So I'm like, cool, I'm just going to rack these up. But it's just like those little things.
Yep.
And then just from a credit card standpoint, it's like just understanding where do you spend the most money? Are you financially responsible enough, right, to do those? And if you are doing that, then you can start to rack up some of those points and just combining those type of things. That's kind of how that's how I got started. And it's, you know, over time, that's how you make some of those redemptions. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of good things that you said around planning in advance because that's where you will find the redemptions. If you're trying to do it a week in advance, flat on a Friday, it's Sunday peak time,
Yeah.
that's where people are like, oh, points don't work. And it's you do have to have some flexibility because at the end of the day, if it's an extra day that you have to take off, or, you know, a if you're okay with taking a quick hour positioning flight to then get that business class flight that has availability from a bigger airport, like that's where you're going to find a lot of those sweet spots that you see on Instagram. But would love to hear a little bit more just around like any, I guess, budget friendly hotel, lesser known accommodations that you've found that have worked really well for you guys just with three kids. And the reason I want to ask that is when you do go over to Europe, it is hard to
Yeah.
find points hotels. A lot of the times with the fire codes they have, you're going to have to get two rooms. So that is one thing if you have right? More than three or four people, you're gonna want to, know. But would love to hear kind of your experience, going over to Europe.
Yeah, I think we got away with it our first time going over to Spain and Europe with a kid that was like under 4 years old or things. So it was like he didn't quite count as the limit. It was like he could sleep in a bed with us. Although their beds are way different in hotels and way smaller than what Americans are used to. Um, this time, definitely hotels, it's like impossible to find a chain hotel that will allow 5 people in a room. And so you've got to stick to 2 rooms. I would say hotels was the probably the biggest expense. And I haven't broken it down. That's probably one thing we'll be working together with on this call or after this call of figuring out the like hotel. It's much easier to search for flights on points than it is hotels. I think there probably are. So we're very much like a hotels.com type family of just find what's available. The other nice part of hotels.com are some of the aggregate like Travelocities and things of the world um, is they show quite a few like Airbnb type listings now within the hotel world, or like a lot of people have bought out commercial buildings and turned them into hotel listings. So it's not really hotel chain and it's like Airbnb, but not Airbnb. It's like Airbnb adjacent. There's a lot of affordable options there. And I think if you are loyal to one, speaking of like the Hyatt type opportunity of booking certain amount of nights, getting a certain amount of nights free, it probably doesn't work fully in your favor. But if you do book like everything through the hotels.com app, you get the one key or whatever it's called cash. And I know you can open a debit card through there or a credit card through there and get more redemption and things. So sometimes it does help being loyal, I guess, in one aspect. I'd say hotels are definitely the biggest part of the budget, though. We usually figure out flights for free over and back, and then spend on hotels. Also, rental cars are weirdly very affordable there,
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least
no,
on the
rental cars.
European side.
Yeah, rental cars aren't. Yeah, hotels. That's the one thing is if you do have a larger family, and that's definitely a. And also, if you aren't, if you don't have a huge stash of points for hotels or,
Yeah.
have points that can transfer to hotels, then it is a little bit tougher. There is actually I mean, obviously Airbnb, that's what we've booked. If you're going over to, international, a trick you can also use is you can literally just you can copy the image and put it into Google and see. And
Ooh,
yeah, so check that with booking.com and compare those two
that's a
because
great call.
yeah, that's what we did. We were in Greece and I think we saved like 500 bucks when we were in Santorini by doing that. But yeah, my suggestion is, if you are booking through those OTAs, which are those online travel agencies, Travelocity, Expedia, Booking. I try not to, but if I do, if you have a car that has like premium travel insurance, that's a good way to protect yourself from that. So that's one thing on the hotel side, and then from a like bigger group type trip, there is a pretty cool new membership rewards coming out called Journey, and we're actually going to get the CEO of that on. The points guy actually is a like co-advisor on that, so he's good buddies with the guy who started it, and that's like a membership model because they're really the challenge that they're solving is exactly what you're just saying. Families, right? You need
Yeah.
a bigger space. Maybe you don't want to stay at an Airbnb. You want to start to get rewards. You want to be able to use points. You kind of want that boutique hotel style slash Airbnb experience for your larger group. So they're creating something where it's more of a point system where it isn't, right? You're having to figure out, okay, where do I stay in these? So then you do have, if you want some of that on-site service like a hotel does have, they'll have that as well. So that's another awesome. I think that's what's cool is there are just different travel solutions coming out for that are catering to families because a lot of people within the points and
Yeah.
miles space are starting to get older and they're like, oh, I have kids now. I realize what it's like. I can't just hop on a flight on a Wednesday at this
Yep.
time 3 days before.
The other thing we learned is, especially with kids, at least I'm pro car, or we're going American here. Convenience versus price sensitivity, and just the ability to be able to go anywhere and explore so much of a country on car versus trekking 3 kids on, even as great as subway stations are, as good as the metro is in other countries, it's still like you have to walk there and get there with 3 kids and then get on and then get off, and you're limited to like a mile or two radius around that, where in a car you can go visit 7 places in a day just from speed. What we've learned too is we used to book maybe a little bit nicer hotel or more expensive hotel closer to like the historic sites. And the thought process was, we'll be right there. We can wake up and go see these things. But then we'd often have a rental car and it's like horrifically hard to park there, or they don't offer parking. You got to find a parking garage, then walk there. And so I would say another sort of trick we've learned throughout the time is just optimizing where, like you can also, and we're very much like go to sleep and wake up hotel people. It hasn't been like we need a resort that we're going to be at all day or until noon and we want to stay there. So we're very much like on the go all the time. And so our hotels don't have to be as nice or in as convenient of locations. And so often you can stay in a little bit probably nicer hotel or one with more space or different things that you need a little bit away from city centers and out by the airport or out by an outlet mall or down on a portion of the city that's not. And if you have either public transportation, you usually have like a place to park your car at that hotel because it's off the city center and off the beaten path a little bit. So sometimes more affordable, easier to get into the city center by train or by car to go to the next location. And so that's something I think that saved us money in the long run is we made a couple mistakes our first trip of trying to stay in the most convenient of place. And it's like you end up paying twice for it because you pay in parking, you pay in place, and you pay in the hassle of trying to figure out all the things that if you have a car, you can be a little bit more ambitious on how far you need to drive day to day.
Yeah, no, I love that thought process because I mean, for us, we're just again, it's two people traveling, so being able to think through five and sharing your mistakes that you learned for people who do, because there are some people, hey, I want to stay in a five-star resort. I
Yeah.
just want to chill. I want to enjoy the resort. But a lot of the times, if you're going international, you're going to see stuff. So it's like, okay, if I'm in these specific places and I want to go see different areas of the country, how do I do that with kids? And that's great advice, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I mean, this has been amazing. You're a wealth of knowledge just from going and making mistakes, learning from those, sharing those. Is there anything else? I mean, you've provided so much. Any like one piece of advice that you want to leave parents who maybe haven't gone international just with when they're taking their kids?
Gas station ice cream saves lives. I think if your kids won't eat the food, you can like pack some calories in those Magnum or Dove bars. No, I think the biggest thing that I would say, while that is definitely true, is just you think you, to your point earlier of just you get life advice from different people and you hear the consistent life advice if you spend time with older people, especially like elderly, is you look back and it's, I wish I would have spent more time with my family. I wish I would have traveled more. I wish I would have worked less. I wish I would have done these things. It's just, I've been, whether fortunate or unfortunate, some of my friends very young have been very successful financially and not very successful in their personal health. And not at like the expense of one or the other, just had really tragic health, life-changing health challenges very young. And so some of them have had young kids and had dreams to like, oh, in a few years when I'm more financially stable, or in a few years I'll do this, or I'd love to take my kids to Europe and I'd love to do this, but this year I have just this really big meeting I'm preparing for all of these months and I really want to be ready for it and it's not the time. It just people talk about this, but just to reiterate it and add my personal spin on it of just you absolutely have to start every year with like, what do I want to do as a person and as a family versus what does my company need from me? Especially, I wrote about this the other day on LinkedIn, and I don't mean to be this like crass about it, but there are physicians, there are emergency responders, there's police, there's people that literally stay up all night and work night shifts so that they can be there in the hardest moments of other people's lives. And so there are some incredibly demanding jobs, incredibly impactful for society at large. What I find just so amazing is there's people like creating apps for the most nonsense stuff that are like, I can't take time away because I have to like get this website page to load 30 seconds. Like some of it is like, what are we doing when we're thinking through like, I gotta work. And so like hustle culture, if you're really building something that's going to change the world and your name will be remembered for generations or eons, whatever the time this is, like by all means, build that thing, pour your life's work into that thing. But I think for 99.99% of people, your life's work is not a little bit more productivity and operational success in the metrics that you have within any organization, even if it's the organization you started. And so the idea that you can't take a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, or you can't figure out a timing schedule that works within a year of time to have real time, whether it's with yourself, a significant other, or with your kids, is just so crazy that I think we'll all look back. Not even, you don't even have to wait until you're elderly to look back and be like, man, these last few years, we could have really created some memories. So I think just the one piece of advice is, especially with kids, if you just change your mindset and perspective a little bit. I know some people talk about being the Uber driver for their kids, and it's like, man, I think I used to do that. It's just very easy to get into a mindset of, oh, I drive my kids around all these places to all these sports practices, and it's busy and it's time consuming. I have a really good friend who said, and he's like in the thick of it. He's got two kids that are just going off to college, but two kids in middle school and high school now. And he just said, like, there is nothing I would rather do. I would give anything to like drag a cooler out to my kid's soccer game and sit there on a Saturday. It's like the coolest thing I could think of doing in my life is I get to watch a kid I created play a sport that I enjoy. And then I get to go to my next kid's baseball game. Like for 10 hours on a Saturday, I would drive 8 hours and sit there and be happy. Like it's the coolest thing. So I think if you just change the mindset just a little bit to like, oh, it's a hassle to travel with kids. They're going to not appreciate it. They're going to do this versus like, oh, it's the coolest thing in the world that I get to experience this with my kids and have them experience with it, even if there are some challenges along the way. So my one bit of advice is just if you can do it, if you can prioritize it, you can find a way to do it. And I can't wait to hear about your adventures ahead.
Wow, that was I'm not even gonna add anything else there because it was you said it perfectly, and that's exactly what I try to tell people. It's just like go do it. There may be challenge along the way, but your perspective is your reality, and just going back and thinking through how do you change that mindset and just go do it. Yeah, and you'll start to see it'll probably help your work. It'll probably help your financial life. It'll probably help your financial health. I mean, here we are today. I'm hosting a podcast, doing this full time, and probably in the best shape of my life because we travel so much and you learn a lot of things about yourself. You meet a lot of cool people on the way. And yeah, I mean, it also just gives you something cool to talk about. It's not, hey, how are you? Busy. It's, oh, I saw you were here. Or you can talk to anyone about anything, and it just
Yep.
opens up, a ton of different stuff. So love that. Really appreciate it, Alex. If people want to learn more from you about, this parenting, anything like that. Not parenting. I don't want to. I know you're big about that on LinkedIn, but
I wish I was a parenting guru. I think my kids talk back to me too much for me to be an authority on parenting. But no, happy to share any thoughts that I have. I've been so fortunate just to be around so many incredible leaders, and like Ross, I think just ask a lot of questions and have just been again tremendously blessed and fortunate to get a lot of I think great life perspective, and some of it comes from travel, as being around the world, having a wife who's lived other places and having sort of the melting pot around us. I think has enabled us to hear different perspectives and choose different foods and lifestyles and ways to go about doing things. And so happy just to offer a different perspective if it's helpful to hear from someone. LinkedIn, probably the easiest way to get me, or my email, phone number. We can give it all and make it easy. I think so many people have given so much of their time to help me that happy to give it back.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll share Alex's LinkedIn here in the show notes. He's a great follow, shares a lot of good information and keeps it real. Doesn't just have all the, fake stuff. He definitely keeps it real. But if you're a first-time listener here, make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button. That way you don't miss any upcoming episodes. We're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, so wherever you get those, check it out. Make sure you give us a 5-star review. That way, we help grow the show. And then also make sure you share it with a family or friend who's wanting to travel more, leverage points and miles, or just wants to start traveling more with their kids. But we will see you next week. Thanks everyone for tuning in.